for some reason, just took me a gazillion tries to actually get it on the podcast. It's my origin story, if you will, my journey into authenticity away from being the people pleaser ever. Hello. Welcome to the podcast, Biz on the Brain, with your host, me, Annemarie, where we dive into how to be your most authentic and unapologetic self in life or business, anywhere in between, because you deserve it, queen. That kind of sounds like a really cool catchphrase. Maybe I should write that down. Anyway, this is a very personal episode. There's no guest. The guest is me and being vulnerable. Let's see how that goes, because I've tried to record this episode like 10 times. Every single time something just didn't work out. Like the battery suddenly was too low, even though I thought I'd, charged it. I didn't have enough space suddenly on my camera. I lost the episodes, and then it would just show up in the most random files, and then I didn't feel it anymore, or like something with the audio. Like it's almost like cursed. But that is the point of me making this episode, because the entire premise of me making this podcast and what I'm doing in my business currently, where I'm focusing on holistic marketing and bringing out the real you as you are developing on your journey of becoming more yourself and just owning that, and then being polarizing because you are just you, without any fluff, without any pretense, without any professional mask, just you, and attract the people who like you for you, which feels honestly rewarding, much more than just being liked for a curated version, right? But it also will polarize people and piss people off, because they might be triggered for you doing what they would like to be doing, but they have withheld from them, which I used to be such a person, or they just don't like you, and they will let you know. The more you are your true self, the more you are vulnerable, the more you are just out there, and it feels scary, and our lizard brains hate that so much. They will self-sabotage you. They will give you all kinds of stories you tell yourself. They will spin around weird incidences like these, so you can tell yourself, well, I shouldn't do it. Might as well give up. But sometimes you have to push through the discomfort, when you're still safe, and when it's really something you actually want, that's something you're pressured to do, or you feel in your bones isn't right for you, but you push through the discomfort. That's not what I mean. So for me, I don't even know where to start with this. Let's just maybe start with last year, because at the age of 35, I was diagnosed with ADHD. And you've probably heard that the media likes to portray this as a new trend, and suddenly everybody's neurodivergent, and where do all these people come from? They want attention, which is great. That's sarcastic. It's really awful, because guess what? Most kids are not diagnosed, especially if they're girls. And as adults, it is even worse. Just look at the percentages. They're like in the lower 10s for kids, and then for women, it's just like, I don't know. I don't want to give wrong statistics, but it is just something that society doesn't like to see. We want to conform. We are made to be just the right kind of you in any given circumstance, so that you're palatable, that you are fit in work, environment, social circles. Like, there's always expectations. There's always these social rules and etiquettes to adhere to, and that's so normalized that when you brush against that, or your brain just doesn't compute, because sometimes I just don't know how to human, it will trigger people. You might have heard about the uncanny valley effect, which apparently a lot of people feel towards neurodivergent people, because we sometimes are not as great at masking, which is pretending to be your typical as we think we are. And I can certainly attest to that. All my life, I was given, I feel like, every day, just comments about what I'm doing in an odd way, how I should be changing things, how I should undo things, or, train myself to perform differently. And that is very typical and very sad. By the age of 10, I think ADHD kids specifically get 14,000 corrective comments, which basically just means you suck. Try it differently. And that does something to your self-conscious. Obviously, it can be the strongest person, but if people keep nagging at you, you just internalize it. It becomes like, neural pathways, and then you get really conscious about them, and then it comes self-fulfilling prophecy, and then you try all your damnedest to change that part. For me, was you always talk so fast, daydreaming, you're too loud, you're too quiet, you're too energetic, why are you always in the background? Like, it was conflicting, because I've always said I don't know how to do the middle ground. I'm just either full on or I'm like off. There's just like these two states, and me trying to be mellow is excruciatingly taxing. And people, when they comment and they say, oh yeah, you calm down with me, you're much more relaxed and calm in my environment, like when I'm around, that is actually the reddest flag you can get from me, which I know though, because that just means I'm not safe with you. I don't feel like I can be myself, because I am not that. I'm either on or off. And yeah, so like that is really, really crazy when you come to think of it. And so when I grew up getting all of these comments, at one point I know I was desperately trying to get friends, and that's been like one of my biggest missions. I feel like forever, really finding people who like me for me. But what I learned, what landed in my brain as a kid, was to be worthy of friendship. And I had to scribble that down in all of the little poetry booklets that kids would hand out to their classmates. That was a thing in the 90s. I would always write, to be a friend, you have to be a friend. To have a friend, you have to be a good friend first. What I derived of that is that I have to bend over backwards and do everything in my power to make other people like me and show them that I'm good, whatever that may mean. So only then could I get the holy grail of friendship. Like, I had to prove myself. Like, I had to go through the trials and tribulations, and they would be like the queen at the end of the quest, and then bestowing upon me like the treasure or whatever. And that's how I operated. And my friends, I don't even want to call them friends, and the people I hung out with were, I don't know, they just kind of rolled with that. They were like, that's cool, we can take advantage. And so they would just literally, I remember in primary school and in middle school, they would literally give me a list of to-dos and don'ts of behavior that they would tolerate. They would be like, you can only laugh like for 20 seconds, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't be weird, you shouldn't be annoying, like all of these things. I was like, do you do that to everybody? No, they didn't. But that was hurtful. But I also was like, okay, maybe they just mean well. And a lot of times when people give you this criticism about your symptoms and you don't even know that it's a symptom, you think it's a character flaw, they often think they mean well, but it's just like very underhanded. Just like, oh, I don't like this about you, please change. And it's not the same as a boundary. But yeah, I knew nothing about any of that. I was just like, I guess I'm a terrible human. I need to monitor how to laugh. So I actually trained myself to turn on the laugh and turn it off instantaneously. And even that was enough. So people would always be like, oh my God, why are you always having such a great time? You're laughing at everything. And then I just stopped. And I thought of dead hamsters and carcasses of pets. I'm everywhere to make myself stop. That was horrible. That was my go-to. It's so every pet around, imaginary pet around me is dead. And staying on it like a graveyard of pets. Fun. That's great. That's great. Great pastime for a kid. And so I stopped laughing altogether. Anything that was funny, I would just look at everybody and check if they were laughing, if it was okay to laugh, and then I might chuckle, and then and if somebody glared at me, I would just stop. Or I'd be mid chuckle, I'd be like, ha. It was wild. And then people in the they tolerated that for a bit, and then people were like, why you never smile? Why you never laugh? I'm like, oh my God, you can never do anything right, so I don't know things. And so, you get all of these compliments for just being not yourself. Oh, now you're much quieter, now you're much more enthusiastic, you apply yourself more in school, you just I usually would get compliments on things that I work really hard to not be myself in. And that does something to your brain. when people are just like, finally you can do these things. See, it's not that hard. And they don't know how taxing it is. But if you don't know that you're neurodivergent, and in the 90s, even if I had known I had ADHD, I wouldn't still have gotten the support or known what to do with it. Still to this day, most of the support people get, as far as I know, because I don't get any other than medication, is how to be neurotypical. Like, I went to a therapy session last year, and this was entirely basically on how to be more neurotypical. I kept asking them, do you know, like, people with ADHD? Like, have you done this with people? Like, this doesn't seem right. This just had all of my hackles up. Like, it was just like, ew, this is ew. Journals, big joke in the ND community. Can't for the life of me not stick to a journal. I buy all of them, they're pretty, and then they just lie there forgotten. I have trouble with doing just like daily diary, like just writing down what I did, because my brain went probably deleted. It just remembers the most absurd details of things, and then the most mundane things, they just get deleted. So it was, it was horrible. And then in the end as well, like, I came in to the session full on just ADHD, like ripped open the door. I usually have too much energy, so I get like very overzealous, and then I'm like a bit too loud because sometimes I have volume control problems when I get excited, and all symptoms. And I went there and I swiveled in my chair and was like, so yeah, I've been recently diagnosed and I want to be like more myself, and I want to learn how to lift this brain of mine and not work against it. And I was like, that's cool. So let's make yourself a structure. We want you to work like from 8 to 10 and then from 12 to this. And like, he wanted to like structure it and force me into these systems. And I was like, ew. Absolutely not. That's not how I work. I need to work with my flow. And sometimes that flow looks ridiculous when I'm just like drifting in and out of tasks and getting everything a little bit done. And then, what I don't get is when you do that, people will tell you that you should be more focused, that you are all over the place, that you can't multitask, and all of that is true for neurotypical people. But like, if I don't keep in the flow, if I will sit down and will like meditate and calm myself down, like intentionally, where I would just fizzle out all the dopamine, of the energy, and I would just be stuck. So sometimes it really helps me. Sometimes it overwhelms my system and I have to control that. It's really wild because everything is like a side quest. Everything, like, you want to sit down and do your taxes, but then you see there's that old glass from yesterday on your table, can't have that. So like, you take that old glass, you take it to the sink, and you notice there's dishes, so you want to do the dishes, but then you notice you haven't had a sip of water, so you pour yourself a new glass of water, but then you realize you should have like wiped the surfaces, and next thing you know, you're doing the laundry because you have this club in your head of wiping the surfaces, and then like, as you're doing the laundry, you spot your plants, and suddenly you're repotting everything, and then you're taking out the trash, and then you're going on the walk, and then you still like haven't done the taxes. And that's not procrastination, that's just being in the flow. And sometimes it is very distracting. So yeah, how can I use that in like time sequences where I can engage in hyper focus that is productive, but also honors my needs, so I won't forget to eat and sleep and go to the toilet. Because that's also very cool. Like, I can just work through 8 hours and be in full on pain after like jolting awake from this, and then I'd be like, why does everything hurt? And then I realized, well, I haven't moved, so my body is stiff. I didn't drink, so I'm parched. I didn't eat, so I'm like, my stomach's eating itself, and my bladder is still full because even though I didn't drink, I didn't pee. So like, doing that for 8 hours, that's kind of like torture. But it overrides body function. So anyway, so growing up and not knowing any of that and thinking I'm just this weird alien who doesn't know how to be human and doesn't know how the body works and doesn't work with the schedules that they put on you, I just had the worst self-confidence, obviously. And going to university, which is where a lot of the people who diagnose for neurodivergence apparently feel like that's a solid criteria. Like, if you did well at university, then you can't possibly be. But I chose something that was my hyper focus. And so like, how long did I study? Like 8 years. So like that, 2006, 2012, that's 6. So like for the 5.5 years that I studied, I had just full-on immersiveness in my hyperfocus. I could dive into all of the literature. I traveled to the country. I lived the experiences. I pulled people. Just was obsessed with it under the guise of being an academic. I loved it. And I also had more flexibility with my flow. So it was totally fine to start working at 7 p.m. and work until 2 a.m. and have that be my productive hours, and then just go to classes throughout the day if I wanted to. Sometimes they were mandatory attendance, sometimes not. And I actually chose a degree that had 3 subjects, which was one of the last years that I was possible in. So I snatched that last minute, and it allowed me to basically have 3 majors, because the workload that they put on me there was exactly the same as the other people who just did it as 1 major. I studied English and American Studies, which included culture, linguistics, literature, and not really politics, but intercultural communication to some extent. It was a whole thing. It wasn't just reading about tables. I wish. But I also studied economics and did the exact same tests and some of the courses that, an economic student attended, while also not having all of the courses. So I had to do a lot more catching up to do, because they didn't care if I didn't have all of the basis knowledge. I just needed to take the same test. It's a lot of art. And then also on top of that, I studied law. And again, they just tested me on the exact same test as the other legal students who had just legal studies. I had English and economics and legal studies, and had to do a lot of catching up there as well. But none of these minor subjects qualified me in my job search as anything at all. I had, after I graduated, and I thought I did pretty well. I had great grades. I had worked part-time. I had volunteered. I had, an honorary bachelor from England. I spoke 6 languages. I had, worked abroad as well. I volunteered in England too. I knew a shit ton of things. I had so many skills, because as a people pleaser, I always thought I needed to be prepared for any situation. If anybody needed help with the most ridiculous thing, I needed to be able to do that. And so I, know so much stuff. And it was never enough in my brain. Anyway, so I went into the job search market as a graduate with still no confidence, and realized that I was always ticking the other box in any of the job questionnaires. That was a thing in 2012. They always wanted you to fill out these online questionnaires. They didn't even bother to just, not a simple resume and CV and then go. No, they wanted you to be pulled so they can label you and categorize you. I don't know if it was like that in other countries, but in Germany it was the trend. And so for me, it was always what did you study? Other. What degree did you have? Other. How many languages do you speak? They didn't give me the option to take most of the language. I was just what the heck? And so I just didn't get anywhere. I sent out 300 applications exactly, and then I was depressed, so depressed. I was I can't. And out of these 300, I got 30 or so invitations for interviews all across the country. I remember being on the train so often, and in the most ridiculous, train hopping, bus hopping, walking, driving taxis. It was just an odyssey to get anywhere, because I don't have a car. And I just showed up. I wasn't really hireable, with the way I showed up. I was please, anybody take mercy, hire me for anything. I applied for absolutely anything. No self-worth, super sad. I wish somebody would have hugged me and told me you deserve shit, a lot of shit. Don't just settle. But people were oh, you didn't get it? Maybe you should lower the bar. And everybody would always tell them to lower the bar. Just don't even ask for money. Don't even do all the free unpaid internships. Do all of the work that you're totally overqualified for. It's why environment is so important when you have big dreams, and when you want to level up and when you want to grow, that you need to find the people who maybe already are there or already dreaming big and are in their delulu stage where it's just like, I don't know how, I don't know why, but it will happen. And I'm just gonna like manifest, affirm it, live it, and be it, and just you around people who just support your ridiculous notions because they're there for a reason. If you don't have them, like if you have them, then you can also kind of make them come true. There's like something there that sparked it, and you can bulldoze your way through something if you're so passionate about it. And I've done that time and again, but at that time I had like actual depression. I was not supported the way I wanted to. I was not in a good headspace, so I didn't get any of the jobs. And even, I think I got like 3 offers, and one of them then backtracked because they hired someone internally who wasn't qualified at all, but policies. But like, I didn't want any of that. I was like, I don't, like, I went through all this, and then I just saw this, and I was like, why? I just felt like I always have this very specific inner, it's not even a voice, it's just like a yes or no button that just like flashes and just goes like, don't do it. And so much in my life, people would just really aggressively tell me to not listen to that. So basically, even after I graduated until that point, I didn't know that I had full agency of my life. It's crazy to think about that now. Like, I've been in so many different iterations of myself. I've grown up so many different ways. Like, I'm like supercharged in Pokemon evolution. Like, that's crazy. But like back then, a totally different person. I don't know if people will recognize me. But it was just so sad. And I remember like crying myself to sleep every day because I had to take on an internship that I couldn't even afford any rent. I had to tap into my savings, and they would bully me every day so much that I had burnout. I had like a lot of medical issues. I had to go to the doctor every week, and then I was shamed over going to the doctor every week in my free time. And then I had to stay overtime both before and after work, even though I wasn't paid for any of that. And I had to do a gazillion things that would be like 10 different job titles. And I was good at all of them. Like, I slayed goals. I was like burning myself out. I was just so on all the time. I wasn't even allowed to have breaks. It was wild. It was so cruel until I had like a full-on breakdown in HR. I just like went there and I raged. Like, full-on cry, rage. She was like, you can't do this to me, because my granddad had just suddenly died, and that like shook my world. And I was like, I'm not fit to work today. And they were like, everybody's granddad dies, come on. And they just had zero sympathy, made up a stupid job that I was supposed to be doing in their head, and shamed me the next day because I was like, I'm not gonna come in, like I'm not gonna stand there and cry, like I'm no use for anybody. And they wouldn't even give me leave to go see the funeral. Like, I was alone in the city. I had no family, no friends. And I was like, what the heck? Anyway. Oh my God, I'm tearing up. But that was like the big shit for me. It was like my big fuck you to the world. It was like, you know what? I'm out. Like, I don't get the support I need. I don't have any dreams anymore. I didn't even have feelings. The only thing I could feel at that point was just sadness and anger. Mostly sadness. And like the burning of my skin from all of the tears in my face. Like, that was painful. Like, crying so much that your entire face is just burning nonstop. I don't know if you can relate to that. I hope you can't. I don't wish that. But so for me, it was like, that moment was like, either I could just, like, I got myself a therapist through amazing circumstances. And she was teaching me how to feel things in my body. I thought it was the most ridiculous thing. Like, where do you feel sad? I'm like, oh, what's that question? And I learned how you can spot that, be mindful, like, you know, attribute a color, a feeling, a texture, a location, like all of these things, just to be present and center yourself and actually focus on yourself. That was wild to me. That was like woo-woo at the point. So I was like, what are you doing? I'm just a waste of time, like that. And she was like, you know, you need serious help. How about we put you in like a clinic for a month and you have like intensive sessions And I was dead scared of her. I'm like, "You're gonna lock me up? Oh my." And she's like, "No, no." But like, I don't know what else to do. Like, you have a lot of stuff to work through. And I was like, "Yes, I do." And how about I can just take a one-way flight ticket to the end of the world and just do that instead? And she's like, "Sure, if you feel like that's good." Because at that point, all of these job interviews, like I said, there weren't that many. But all of these job interviews, they would always come at me with the like, "What can you even do? Like, I see your resume and there's nothing." I was like, "What do you mean there's nothing?" All of the languages, all of the courses, all of the work experience, they would just tear all of that apart. And I just felt like, what's the point? But like, one thing that out of all of the numbness and all of the, like, I was just completely giving up. All of the things that the only thing that I knew in my body was I can travel. Like, that's a thing that most people maybe not seeing as a skill. It is a skill. I can tell you that. But it was something that nobody, even at my lowest point, could tell me I could not do. I could legit, you can drop me off, like, blindfolded anywhere in the world and be like, "Good riddance, like, figure it out." And I'd be like, "Okay, I can do this." I can be in any country and I will be able to make friends, to get a place, to book amazing deals, to get myself to places and to walk around, to take transport, like, even if I don't speak the language, even when I lost my voice, because that happened too, like traveling completely without a voice, like, Ariel and the Little Mermaid, I still can do shit. And I was like, okay, I only knew that I can do solo travel from my time in England because all of my friends spent all of their money on partying. And I wanted to just actually explore the country I was in. Like, what was the point in going to a different country if I'm just living the wild college life, which I also didn't like. It was like too much overstimulation. I don't drink. I don't like all this smelly people crouching my space and the loud music and blah. No. I was like, I want to see places, and got myself like this train ticket for young people, which was £25. Then I went on these £5 to £10 trips in the area of Lancashire, explored everything by myself, and it was amazing. And it just showed me that I can do stuff on my own. I don't have to rely on people. I don't have to ask permission. And I can also just be. It's okay to just exist. You don't have to sightsee. You don't have to go to the museums or have to maximize things or you have to go shopping. You can just sit there and look at a new thing. Or read a book. Like, it doesn't matter who you're living life for. And it was funny, at that time I had a blog that was called Live While You Wait, because that was my mindset. I was like, I'm just gonna endure this and something's gonna come up. I felt like so passive. And so when like this incisive incident happened with my granddad dying and me having this mental breakdown in the office, I was like, you know what? Travel it is. That's the only thing I know. So I booked myself a one-way ticket to New Zealand in Australia, like via Hong Kong. And the only thing I booked was the hostel in Hong Kong and the first 3 or so days in Auckland. Nothing else was set at all. I did no research, which was not good. I couldn't even manage to get the energy to plan anything, to do anything. But what kept me going was that while I was still working, I somehow miraculously got 2 working holiday visas. I don't know how I managed to bend time and space because I only had like half an hour, like 60 minutes max of lunch break, and I was basically never allowed to rest. I would get scolded, and if I appeared too long, people would like time me. If I like had to go fetch mail or something, they would time me. Even though like people on cigarette break, they would go like 5 times a day. Nobody cared, but it was really, I was a target for some reason. And I don't know that just probably can relate to that. Like, some person will just hate your guts, and you try so much to like appease them, which is like not the way to go. Like, just screw it up. Like, if you got a problem, you tell me. but also in a professional setting, just be professional. Just like, leave me be, I'll leave you be. Like, what the heck? You don't have to be my friend. But I procured these 2 visas, even though it took me like an hour to get across town. And even though I had to sit there at the embassy and be interviewed in person, so like I couldn't mail stuff, and I had to do that multiple times, but I did. I got both visas. I got a super great deal. I think it was just like $475 to go to New Zealand via a 3-day layover in Hong Kong, and then just like $40 to go to Australia. Like, that is wild. I'm really good at travel deals, which is why I also have travel blogs. And then I remember this person who I also sadly can't call friend anymore. She sent me out of the blue. She just sent me a travel blog of World of Wanderlust. I still think she's great. Brooke Sayward is so great. And as I read that, it was like, I can do that. Like, that is amazing. That is inspiring. But I can do that too, because I had blogged for the places I worked at. I have always loved taking photography. I know how to write things, not just blog, but like I know how to tell stories and describe things. I taught myself coding. I went deeper into the algorithm changes on social media. That was like a hyper focus of mine. I loved algorithm stuff. Now I loathed. By the time I was like, oh my god, can I take over everybody's social media? Like, I'm gonna like up the engagement rates. Oh my god, that was so much fun for me. And so, I was like, I know exactly what to do. Like, I already started with a proper template. I tweaked everything and had a full-on set structure. Like, all of the blog posts had like a certain amount of words and a certain structure to like where the photos went and like the SEO part. And I don't know, everything was completely solid. I just needed to set it up and I was good to go. And I also enjoyed it tremendously. And so I started my own travel blog, didn't tell anybody about it because, again, I was afraid of being seen. I was afraid of like owning up as I am because I thought that wasn't enough. So I needed to like tweak in the back end to be perfect. Because, also been working on perfectionism because, you don't have to be perfect at things you're doing brand new. You can't just start like a hobby and suddenly you're like this gifted kid who knows to play a guitar or like a ukulele or knows to code or like all of these things I thought I had to be good at, otherwise I shouldn't do it. That's not a good way to go. But yeah, so I got my visas, I got my flight ticket at my blog, and I had the audacity to go despite a lot of people being really, really mad at me and telling me I was just so wrong and deluded in doing this when I could just be maybe working even more at this internship and maybe they might hire me eventually. And I was like, I don't want to be hired here. And they actually came to me. They're like, oh yeah, we kind of like what you do now after they transferred me. And we want you to keep working for free at this internship. How about that? I was like, no, absolutely not. And so I told people just a month before my trip, because I had from books and paid and stuff. And that was wild. Like, that opened a whole can of worms of people being so triggered, so alarmed, and so violent in their disapproval / also with like some serious silent treatment. And I was like, you know what? That just actually proves my point. It really hurts. But yeah, I'm going to do the reset button at the end of the world. The end of the world, like from Germany. Basically, like that was the farthest I could go to Australia. I couldn't go to the moon. So I was like, yeah, Australia it is. Completely new country. People know me not. I actually had some friends. But I just wanted to see who I am. Because I didn't know. And people wouldn't let me find it out. They would be quick to tell me all the time. I know that meant well, but it's not it. It's not the way. So I started off straight away into a lot of misadventures, a lot of crazy things that happened that just pushed me every single day. And I even wrote books about it. Like, you can see that on my Amazon. If you just Google my name, you'll find the books. because it was so wild. I wrote them down for myself because I got blackouts. I was squeezing in so much stuff in my itinerary, and I traveled for a full year before going back home. And then I was like, yeah, I can't stay. So I went off, and then I started traveling nonstop for 8 years. Then the pandemic hit, and that was like benched. But yeah, so I lived by myself out of a suitcase for 8 years while I was running my businesses, while I was working on myself and rediscovering myself. And I can only stress how travel is the most life-changing thing anybody could do. And I wish it was more accessible. And I wish it wasn't such a privileged thing, because I know that I, from being so frugal and I was antisocial, had quite a few savings actually. Because I always thought like, yeah, I needed a lot of backlog when I graduated. Like even as a preteen, I would save up for money that I would use then as an adult. I would never splurge on it, really. I would not treat myself. I would always live in the future. And that's a very German thing. Like you always think about what could happen in the future. You have to be safe. You don't spend. You like don't even invest most of them. Like you just live for pension. And that's when you can go wild. And then, you actually can't. But like that's the German mentality. I was fully prescribed to that. And so I had these savings for the potential of maybe getting a car and maybe a flat and maybe a home and like having to move across to a country or whatever. And then none of that happened. So I was like, you know what? I can just like sit here and be sad and wait passively, or I can just like put this money to use, invest in myself and find a job. Like I had these working visas. I might as well get a job in Australia, like make the money, take it back. Because like there's always, you can make money. It didn't land in my brain that, I don't just have to hoard the money and keep it safe and tight. I can also spend it and make more of it, multiply it, apply it, like invest it. Like there's so many things. Money is just energy. It's just a transaction. You invest in things and then that helps you live a good life. Just having money, what does it even mean? It's just like this arbitrary thing. Anyway, so I started seeing it as that because I went to Hong Kong. A lot of stuff happened. Like that's a whole, like again, I wrote the book about it. It was a whole other thing. I went to New Zealand and then things just almost magically happened because I was so resigned. I was in this state of just like acceptance because I was so done. Right? When they tell you to be like, for manifestation, you need to like let go and accept it and just like not hold tight to how you think things should go, or how you think people should react, or what you're supposed to be doing, all of these things, and just like resign your wishes, like release them and then resign yourself to whatever happens. I was just in the I don't care anymore state. But that helped me because I would just like drift in and out of just sleep. Then I would just wander around like a zombie and look at things. And then because I was staying in hostels, because I was very cheap, I naturally met people. Well, they approached me and I couldn't wiggle myself out of the social situation. I was just like, oh my God, there's a human talking to me. Anyway, so these lovely people were just like, I like you. Do you want to go and join me on this quest today? Like they saw a thing, they wanted to go there and they didn't want to go alone. And they asked me. I was like, okay. Because, one thing you learn when you travel, that's like one of the most important things any woman especially should hone is intuition. So like, especially when you travel solo, you only have yourself. Like you have to look after yourself when you're sick or when something feels off or, when somebody rocks you or you eat like bad food that he doesn't agree with you, whatever. There's only you. So you have to be really careful when you go party. You can't just get super drunk because nobody's going to take you on. People might take advantage of it. You might not find your way back to your hostel because it's unfamiliar. Like you can't just take any and all the back roads because you don't know anything. Maybe you need to do more research on the weather and the location so you don't get stuck in the storm. Like there's all of these things. You have to be so mindful. Your body naturally is much more alert because when you're at home, you're on autopilot. Things can happen more easily because you're not as awake because you're so familiar with everything. So you just blindly walk your same street. At the same time, it's really easy if somebody wants to actually stalk you. Oh my gosh. So yeah, when I traveled, and obviously I had to be alert because, but I also have ADHD. So like that was a tricky balance to be daydreaming and just like going with this pull of dopamine, but also staying safe. And so I didn't really succeed with that a lot of times, which is why I also loved travel blogging and started blogging to share all of the misfortunes and share about all of the things I learned and I wish I had known to help other women, but also help other women not be afraid and on guard all the time, but to see that, well, things happen. That's just a fact. But the way you handle it when it happens is the biggest thing. And then what you learn is that you can ensure to trust yourself first and foremost, that you have your back. I always have like a backup plan, even if I'm not consciously thinking about it. There's always like a solution ready to go. It's like, yeah, the flight didn't take off. I'm stuck in this country. What do I do? My credit card got stolen. Okay, what do I do? Like all of these crazy things you usually don't have to deal with at home. Like I said, I'm really good with travel. That's just something, I don't know if it's my ADHD brain and like the added deadline and pressure in this situation where my overthinking brain, it sees all of the different outcomes at any given moment, can suddenly tap into this like in full use at full capacity. It's very tiring, but that I can work with that stress. And what I learned is then that I can just do my own stuff. I have nobody to answer to. Like if I wanted to just sleep on a bench in a park, I can do that. If I want to go through the park, go up the mountain, I can do that. If I just want to sit by the beach, I can do that. If I just want to see all of the museums in one day, I can do that. Like if I want to leave this town because it's boring, I can do that. And you just naturally, especially in hostels, you just meet people, you're just kind of forced to be social. And, there's always people with so much wealth. I mean, all of these, like, I especially stuck with solo traveling women because I was so afraid of everything. And so I just asked them for things and they would be like, yeah, you can just go hitchhike and here's some tips on what to do and like how you listen to your gut instinct. Again, that's the most important. If somebody feels off, if somebody feels like a red flag, don't have to know why, you don't have to analyze it, and just keep your distance. And some people will instantly feel so fun to you. And I would just go there and want to be like, in kindergarten, like, hey, let's be friends. Let's do stuff together. And then I would have the most amazing friendships that way. And if I ignored red flags, then I would definitely learn my lesson. For instance, I remember one time I was supposed to review this one hostel, which was the most grimiest place ever. It was gross. All the carpets, all of the surfaces were sticky. The entire kitchen was just frosted with dirt and just gross stuff. You can see insects everywhere, which is hard in Australia at the coast. But it was just gross. People were partying and it was loud. People were really obnoxious. Depending on where you stay, the crowd is specific. And that put me in a terrible dump of a room at the end of a terrible corridor, which with flickering lights like in a horror movie. And then their safe was a cardboard box of pressed wood hanging on a hinge. It couldn't even close. And they were like, that's your room, have fun. I was like, I'm supposed to review this place. Like, what, you want me to write? Like, do you want me to like tear this to shreds? What's going on? And then it was a mixed storm that put me in. They kind of put me in a nice room, and like they just like piled on. And so we were 3 girls, 2 women from England who were there to party, and they were all beautiful and dolled up. And I was just a grimy backpacker. But then this dude came in. He was so slick and he was so sleazy and he was like charming. And I was like, I hate you. I was like, my instant reaction was like, I hate you. Don't come near me. And he was so nice. He was a typical nice guy, which isn't a nice person. Just to clarify. So he was this typical nice guy trope, and he was so charming to the women. He tried to give me compliments, and it was just like, stop. Like, I don't want to talk to you. And And my people pleaser was like, oh my gosh, you shouldn't be so rude. You have to give him a chance and stuff like that. But I was so tired and I was done in like this entire shithole. I was like, no, I don't have to entertain you. I just want to sleep. And then he convinced the girls to go party. And I tried to hide my valuables under my pillow because I couldn't lock it away. But I was not awake enough to realize that I had left my wallet and my passport in the very accessible backpack on the floor. Yeah. And so the next morning, he kind of woke us all up with the biggest grin, and he was thanking us so dramatically about the amazing night and thanks so much for the birthday gifts. It was great. And he smiled at me, and I was like, I didn't go to a party. I didn't give you anything. And he was just like smiling still. And then he left the room with like a wave, like dramatic exit. I was like, he stole from me. And I just ran to my backpack and indeed all of the money. And usually I had never more than like 10 or 20 bucks in my wallet. I usually had just like the credit cards. But that time I had taken out the entire rent for the next week for a new hostel I was going to get into. And that was like $150 Australian dollars. So I don't know, 100 US dollars. That was a lot for me. And everything was gone. I know that wasn't a smart move to leave that there. Like, that's my bad, but it still doesn't justify being robbed. And so I was like, girls, check your wallets, check it now. And they did. And they realized. And he got them a lot, like, hugely drunk. They were so drunk. He got them super drunk. And he made them go to an ATM and take out money. And they did. And I think they took out like 400 or so British pounds. So like, I don't know, $550. And yeah, all of it was gone. And I was like, that's what I thought. And so I went down to reception. I still saw him like walk out like with a stride, like out the front door. I was like, stop this guy. He robbed us. And the person at the reception was like, I don't care. Like, yeah, proof. I'm like, yeah, stop him. Then there's proof. And she just looked at me like, I'm not getting paid enough for it. And it's probably true because just backpackers were working there for free, which just, they have to clean the rooms like at reception. That's the trade-off. And so she just didn't do anything. I was like, call the police. I'll talk to the police. She's like, oh, no. And so basically he just walked away with the money. Nothing happened. I even contacted the people who I was supposed to review, and they didn't care. I was like, what the heck? But can you imagine, people pleasing me actually didn't write a scathing review? Oh, that would have been such a story. Oh my god, I could have like gone with the story to magazine. Like, I should have fucking blew this up. Like, now I would just be feral about it. Like, I might have tackled him. I don't know if I would, but I'd like to imagine him. But like, how? And so like, so many of these instances taught me that I should just listen to my gut. It's okay to judge people quickly based on your intuition. It doesn't have to mean that you should be bad and an asshole to people. That's not what I mean. And you should still be open and like check your stereotypes and judgments all the time. But like, intuition is so strong, and my intuition has always been so on point, but all of my life I was always trying to ignore it. So travel really helped me confirm my suspicions that I should listen to this voice. It's there to protect me, and it has so many times saved my life, literally. And so like, the more I went along these journeys, the more I was just open to the flow, where people would be like, oh, have you heard about this town? You should go check it out. It wasn't on my radar, but like, I went the next day, and then I met the most random encounters which changed my life and my business. Like, for instance, when I landed in Melbourne, where I wanted to stay, that was the plan, and like get a job, couldn't get a job. But like, I arrived there, a friend who I met in Sweden when I was working in Sweden, she allowed me to stay with her. So she picked me up, she drove me to her house, she showed me her room, and she was like, good riddance, have fun in this room, we have it for a month. And she left. I was like, what? I thought I'd just stay in here for a couple of days until I find like something. And she just gave me her room. I was like, what the heck? So suddenly I had like a house with housemates who were amazing. And like, one of the housemates, he helped me set up the blog in a better way. He had like a whole big computer setup because he was in IT. He was like, yeah, you can use it anytime. He gave me his big ass laptop because I was working on the tiniest Google Chrome booklet, whatever, and it always crashed. Like I was typing something ferociously because like when I type really, really fast and noise people to no end because I'm loud. And so I was typing and I had to wait for a word to be filled out with the text. It wouldn't catch up to me writing. It was that slow and I'm really fast. And so he was like, no, here's a laptop, have it. And then he gave me access to his big setup so I can have 2 screens to like properly code my website. And it was amazing. I just then ran through town, like dropped off my applications everywhere, didn't get anywhere. And didn't get a job. Was like, well, that's nothing new. But I stumbled upon this big flag announcing next week would be Melbourne Fashion Week. And I had always wanted to go to Fashion Week. I had been so passionate about fashion because it was one of my favorite stims in school. Like with my ADHD, a stim is something to self-stimulate yourself so you can do stuff to get you enough dopamine to do something. Like focus on what the teachers say, looking at the board. It's when you see people like tapping their foot or like flicking their panties or just like gnawing at their cheeks inside or like playing with their hair. Like all of these are stims to keep you focused. And I needed to stim so I can literally compute what was being said. If I didn't do it, I would just have all of the stimulus coming at me at once. Like I would hear people clacking in the hallway with their heels. I would see like birds in the trees outside. I would like notice all of the little fidgeting around the room. I would like notice how bright the light, like everything was too much. So I started drawing, but I didn't draw fast enough to keep up with my thoughts and to keep up with what was being said. And so I started like with a template of a person. So I was just like trace it, put on clothes, trace it, put a new outfit. And so I would design. I had binders full of clothes. I was just like a machine with fashion design. I loved it so much. But of course, people were talking me out of it. They were like, yeah, you can't be something with pursuing art, whatever. So yeah, that was sad. But so I was in Melbourne and I was like, Fashion Week is here. And I found out I can actually buy a ticket as like a plebeian that has nothing to do with the industry, as like a grimy backpacker. I could be there. And so I bought it. And I bought myself a new outfit and I got myself a haircut, which was the most horrible thing ever because they did not know what to do. They abandoned me while they put the bleach on 3 times, which completely hurt like a beast. And they left me. Didn't rinse it out in time. Like that was like my entire hair was like straw. They were horrible. Then they put on the color and they made me mix the color because they were like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, what? And then they left me there. Again, I think they all went home. And then one of them wanted to close shop and like, oh, you're still here? I'm like, excuse me? And I looked like, remember Pink, the singer in the early days, and she had like this bright pink hair. That's what I looked like. And I had a short crop, looked like a Goldie Hawn gone housewife in the, 60s? And she had this super cute pixie cut. But I looked like a housewife wanted to do it herself. Like everything was misshapen and weird shape, sticking out at weird places. My entire hair was just like chopped. And then I had the worst color and I just looked at them and they're like, yeah, we have to like pay overcharge because like you stayed longer. I was like, I stayed longer? You weren't there at all. I had to do everything myself and I still paid them. I shouldn't have paid them anything. It hurt so bad. So I went to the next shop, bought myself like a flower crown, and that's what I will wear for the next year. Would always be seen with flower crowns, but because it just distracted from the mess on my head. And it made me look kind of cute, like it's on purpose. So I went with that atrocious haircut to Fashion Week and the weirdest outfits. But I then just found people who were like, hey, I'm a fashion photographer. Can I like document your style? Like, oh my God, actually you shouldn't, but okay. And like I got to network. I got into a lot of events. I got a lot of stuff for free that really, helped me on my budget. And I remember I walked into this institute and it was like a big exhibition of the fashion students. And I looked at everything. It was fascinating. And then it was one person only. Nobody was there looking at things. And he was just like, hey, you want to talk about the exhibition or whatever. And I started talking about my journey in my blog. And he was like, so what's your business card? I want to check it out. And I was like, I don't want to talk about the blog. I don't want to why would I have a business card? He's like, you can't have that. So he asked me for a design real quick, which I then whipped up. And then he printed 200 business cards. The next day I could fetch them. And he even gave me pizza. And he was like, good luck, keep me updated, like tell everybody about it, like market your business. I was like, what? And he was like, tell me these things like, you're really good at talking with people, like you would be great at interviews, like you should be in front of a camera and all of these things. I was like, this random person has nothing to do with pleasing me for no reason. Like he didn't get anything out of it. He just actually liked me and what I did and how I was, unfiltered, and affirmed that. I was like, what? Like, what? I couldn't quite understand how I'm enough, right? That was crazy. And so more and more of these encounters just happened. Like these two women that were brought with me in the hostel, and they actually got me in touch with their business friend in London who specialized in PR, and she helped me set up a media kit. I didn't know what that was, and so I started pitching to companies with the media kit, and I was not sure how to do that. So like the next day I suddenly ran into this woman who then took me under her wings, and she started coaching me how to pitch, and she made me go to businesses in person and introduce myself. And then the next time I met somebody else who helped me do it out by email. Like all of these strangers would just show up in my path, then be drawn to me. We would hang out, they would help me with business, and they would leave. And I was like, what is this? This is like this magical quest. And as soon as I just complete something and I just accept the help, because I usually never really accepted help, things would just fall into place. And my blog was growing. I was doing a lot of collaborations with so many, like most of the tour companies in Australia. I would be cruising around most of the country through these collaborations where I didn't have to spend the money off my backpacking, and I would be working in like tour companies, like in little tour information booking places, working on the social media. And it was so chill because it was Australia. It's always funny to me how I turn very, very German when I work, because then I don't allow myself the breaks. I get like very overzealous. I get very self-deprecating. People are like, just take a breather, like just go out, chill out for a second, like let's have a break, let's leave early. You did everything. And I'm like, what? I guess this whole internship really messed with my brain. But like, yeah, so I got into all of these opportunities, and it was wild. And the more I met these people, because I was just so myself. Some days I was like completely wired up. I would be like so energetic, and I would be like a little ball of electricity, like the Energizer Bunny would be like, oh my god, I'm so excited, like I want to go to these places, I want to go to these places, you want to come with me? And then like I would like speed walk everywhere, and it would just be like crazy, like to keep up with me. And people were like, that's cool, I like your energy. And I'd be like, what do you mean that? Could you potentially mean that? Or even like, especially at the start when I was in New Zealand and I was still very emotionally raw, and I had to process a lot, and so I'd still cry every day. And sometimes people would be like, so how are you? I'm like, and it's okay. And they're like, how are you really? And I would start crying. And I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, oh, and they're like, no, let it out. And they would just sit there and listen and hold space. And I was like, that is a new experience. I never allowed myself that, and never had people really doing that without feeling uncomfortable and trying to shush me, or just giving advice to shut me up. Like that's usually a response most people give when you see somebody struggling, they have a problem. You just give them a solution, be done with it. But that is very dismissive. So I always ask people, do you actually want my opinion, or do you just want to talk? Sometimes you just need to get it out of your system, but also ask them if that's okay. Because, sometimes it's a lot and they're not in the space to take that on that day. But I met so many of the people who were just holding the space, and then they would part ways with me. And, there's nothing they gained from it. There was like no hidden motive. There was nothing to prove. They just were okay with me as I showed up every day in whatever shape or form I was in. And that was like so affirming, and that really helped me become more authentic when people started telling me that my blog, like I still remember that I was at this horrible sales job. I keep saying horrible, I got so many horrible jobs. Australia really pushed me to like the worst things so I can flip out and like stand up for myself for a change. Truly, at so many places where I was just like rage quitting for the first time, but I would do like, yeah, like you treat me like that. No, I'm off. I'm going to a different island, state, whatever. You'll never see me again. Hey, sometimes I need that rage back. Come on, please. But I just met these amazing people. And then at the sales job, where again, I wasn't allowed any breaks, but we had to work in the glaring sun in late spring. It was horrible. I was completely dehydrated. I was constantly hungry. We weren't even allowed to eat. People were fired over sitting on the curb, just like snacking real quick. So people would be like, I'm frazzled. If I don't get enough food or drink, if I'm like overworked, overwhelmed, I get like spaced out more than usual. Like I don't know what my appendages are doing, get stuck in things because I don't know the space my body like holds. I would mumble my sentences. I would like get glazed eyes. Just I would zone out like in the middle of a sentence, and then people were like, "Oh my god!" Like they took me inside, which wasn't allowed. But I was like, I don't care at this point. They took me inside. They gave me drinks. They gave me food. They like invited me to parties and stuff. And that's when I realized like I don't actually have to do this. Like why do I do this? Like I can do so many other jobs. Why do I do this? And so I realized I wouldn't even be getting paid if I didn't even do a single sign up for this started for sales thing, which they completely glossed over when they hired us. They said there would be a base salary. And then they said suddenly the base salary was tied to at least one sale. And they were like, yeah, usually people don't make sales up until the 7th week. I was like, is that even legal? I doubt it. Anyway, so I was like, and so I just completely forgot. Like I just ditched the entire script because every day we were like drills and like in a kind of boot camp situation for like 4 hours of exactly how to read people, how to find out their subtle triggers and emotional weaknesses, and then exploit that with a script. So we would be given like a couple scripts that you would have to stick by word by word because they were like proofread by psychologists, so you can really get into people's emotions and like twist their feels to make them sign. It was like wild how emotionally manipulative that was. It was icky, the lingo we used. I was just appalled by myself. It was for a good cause. I'm not going to say for what cause, but basically this agency that was working for the good cause was just working for their own buckets. Like the more sales we made, the more money we made, and like not that much was actually given to the organization because most of it was just sucked up by admin. So we were always discouraged from signing up once we needed them to be subscribed. We needed them to be distracted enough so they would subscribe a lot, and there were like statistics on that people forget subscriptions and would keep them running. We were even taught that people who said they didn't have money and you could see it in their home that they were not really well off, we would still need to sign them on the big box. And I noticed that if I applied the script properly, that they would be completely blindsided and then just write it like the signature. And I was like, that is wild. I don't want to be that person. And so I just gave up. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna I don't care today. So like I just rocked up at the houses and I would just be completely feral. I don't know what I did. I just blabbed about anything and everything. And they would be like, oh my God, you're full on. I like your vibe. People were like, oh my gosh, you're so bubbly. I'm going to sign up because you're nice. I was like, what? And in one day I gave up, I got 7 people to sign up. Just because they liked me. They didn't care about why I sold something or what I was selling. And not all of, like, one of them had like a gigantic mansion with like this wife floating down the spiral staircase to give me a cup of water. And then she would like go back in her like negligee thingy. Like she looked like a goddamn like Hollywood princess. I was like in her gown thing, satin. I was like, what? And he was like running multiple yachts, like in a whole seafaring business. And like, I was like, what the heck? And he's like, you know what? I can support a fellow entrepreneur. And he just like signed up for a couple things just because. I was like, what is this? And so then I realized, like, A, I should not work according to scripts, especially when I hate them. B, I can be myself and people actually like that. And that is like also one of the best selling things you can get to market yourself in your business. Just be yourself. You can sell anything. That's wild. I need to remind myself that again. But yeah, so all of these instances just really affirmed that it's okay to be yourself, that there will be people who will shove a door in your face, regardless of how good your script is or regardless of how cool other people think you are. And it's completely okay to be polarizing. And at this point in my life, I kind of want to be polarizing. I kind of want to be full on with my ADHD, with the way I show up, with my colors, with my branding, with all of the things that I do, because I'm multi-passionate and I have so many skills and they all tie together. Don't want to be pushed in any of the boxes. And if you just hit people with that, if you're just really upfront, then they will let you know if they think you're a fit or not. And you're not in the business of convincing people that they should be working with you, that you're a great person, that you're worthy. There always is an audience for whatever you two have. You just need to find them, and you find them best if you are already showing up as the thing that they would accept. But you don't know what that is until you just like be yourself. Like, you know, it's the easiest and the hardest thing to do. Just be yourself. And so through travel, I found more out about what I like, what I didn't like, how I could manage my energy levels, how I could follow my passions while also monetize things, which is really one of the hardest things too, also for a creative. Like that's, if I could, I would just constantly create or daydream, like collaborate and make things happen. But I would like other people to take over, right? I don't want to do the business side of things. I don't want to go into the nitty-gritty and the details because my mind's already latched onto a new idea. I'm like the idea machine. I'm like, you talk to me, I already see like a highlight reel in my eyeballs of your business, what a trailer could look like. You want to talk about your website, I already see a whole photo campaign, which you then repurpose for social media and like could be interactive. And that's already in my brain. Like I see the visuals, I see how it ties together with the copy and how the first impression come together on every single platform. And most people tweak every single platform. So they're like fractured self. Like when I research people, or like, for instance, when I research a potential coach I want to work with and I like their stuff on Instagram, and then they go on TikTok and they're entirely different, maybe much more stiff or maybe much more loose. And then I go on their website and that's completely put together professionally with like clear-cut, bluish, gray corporate images and like SEO optimized text. And I'm just like, who are you? Which personality is true? Because for the sake of being found and being authority and expert online, a lot of people just forgo themselves or forget what that could be like. And in my journey of working on myself, refiguring out what I like, what I don't like, how I show up, unlearning a lot of old patterns and thoughts, I see that I'm so many different versions all the time. It can change really quickly from month to month, or sometimes it takes months and sometimes it takes years. But with branding, especially, people like wait and maybe they hire an expert and they do their own thing in their own way, their own style. I mean, obviously listening to the customer, but then you have a different person for copy and then they maybe hear something else because you showed up differently that day or you have different goals, but you're constantly changing and tweaking and adjusting as you are also growing. And for me, I always kind of help people in my earlier stages. Like I kind of always talk to my old self who was stuck on certain things that I now learned and overcame, but I'm still like close enough so I can relate and help with a bigger, more evolved picture, you know, to accelerate where they stuck. And so that's how I see branding. You know, like the first impression should be the same pretty much on all the accounts. You can still tweak it to the social. You can still tweak it to the way you want to show up regarding video and photo differently, but it should still feel like you, an extension of yourself. And I think that is the easiest and the hardest thing to do, especially as you learn more about yourself. So you want to tweak and change it, which is why I started offering virtual photography, because that is a really fast and quick and easy way to refresh all of the content, refresh your brand images before you do like this big yearly shoot or whatever, where you can like try on a new thing that you discovered about yourself while also having content. You can do that from your own office, from your home, because that's virtually anywhere in the world, as long as you've got your phone, internet, and preferably a tripod. I can take photos of anybody. It's really, really cool. So I really found that the more I show up as myself and the more I connect with people who are doing that I can then draw inspiration from. And that ties into your environment. If you don't have a community, or if you're in hermit mode like I am and don't really see people, when you find these communities online through shared interests, through like shared values, who are also on the self-development spiritual path, and you see how they're ambitious, but they also support unconditionally, but they also call you out on your BS if you're like, self-sabotage or, iterate certain wordings that are very self-deprecating. They might call you out on that, and then you get more mindful of how you actually talk to yourself. That is so helpful. That it's like immeasurable, and it also works with the fact that yes, you can work on yourself, you can unlearn stuff, you can go solo travel or like read the books and listen to the podcasts, but you cannot completely do all of this in isolation, because we are social animals. We are meant to learn with others, from others, and heal our wounds. Like, if you have commitment issues and if you've got trust issues, like, love stuff, you can't just heal that by yourself. Relationships, be it romantic or platonic, are there to help you create the safe space where you can like learn from old things or rediscover things, but you have somebody there to show you and trigger you, but then use that to facilitate your own growth, and they would then be compassionate for you, with you. You would be compassionate for them, with them, learn together, grow together, like just really that support. You can't just do it by yourself. You can't just be quiet about it. And like, that's one thing that I'm currently really aware of, that, with this podcast having taken ages to me to actually come to fruition. That's one of the things of me fearing of being seen. Like, I'm so used to showing up online. I've done that in my blogs. I've done that in video. I've done that on social media. I've spoken on stages. I've written books. But there's always like something that keeps trying to have a tap on how much of myself I can reveal, which is fine. You don't owe anybody all of you at any given point in time. You don't have to share your trauma. You don't have to share your day-to-day. You don't have to make everything content. But sometimes it's specifically opening up about certain things and being vulnerable and sharing your journey that will then actually connect to your dream clients, to your dream friends, to the community, to then help you with and hold that space that you need, that you were like so afraid of being rejected from, that will actually propel you. It's that discomfort I talked about that helps you grow. So yeah, for me, it's really showing up and keep talking, because a lot of times I just talk to in my head all the time, all day long. And then when it comes to me trying to record it in a video, because I thought that was a pretty good speech, like that was very inspirational. I wish I had that as a 16-year-old or whatever. So like, let's be the big sister, put it out there for other people. And then my mind just deletes, right? It's the same when people like ask me, so how do you feel? Where do you feel this? Like my first therapist did. And just my body was just like numb. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's this kind of self-protective mechanism that tries to keep you safe, which only limits you, like there's this difference, and your gut knows the difference between where you can show up intuitively, fully as yourself, who is safe, which space is safe, which moment is safe, and then putting it out there regardless of how you feel and of how frantic it makes you, like crying in front of strangers who said they're holding space, and that's uncomfortable, but that is a relief that you needed to work through, a release to just keep going. And so that's how I see authenticity, and that was part of just like the start of this entire journey of what it means for me to be more authentic, to step more into my own self, unlearn a lot of things, and be more unapologetically myself. I still have, a journey to go. Like, I'm still triggered, especially right now. All of this stuff comes back. Like, I feel like so many things are mirroring that moment before I left for Australia. I started my business, started traveling. So many things feel like a parallel, where I just parked myself in this comfort zone, but I'm not really happy, So that's why I wanted to bring it up, to maybe start a discussion about authenticity, maybe connect with people who resonate with this, and maybe to just get over this inner block of sharing my story fully and vulnerably. And sure, there will be people potentially who will not like what I say, who will not like my face or my eyebrows, who will not like any of the story, who will be like triggered. But this is not for them. They can go somewhere else. Okay, but if you want to have a good and insightful and honest discussion, connection, always free to connect with me on social media. And it would be also great if you were to rate this podcast. It's still pretty new, and any push is greatly appreciated. I have an Instagram account, a Facebook page with this, where I'm not really that active. I just push a couple notifications of what's up, some reels and snippets. But yeah, I hope more people find this podcast, because it's just full of conversations with other fabulous female entrepreneurs about just life and business, and how to just be yourself and work with your own brain regarding of your neurotype. Because, we need that modeled. And I think the current generations are leaning more towards that authenticity, being yourself, not taking shit, for setting boundaries, being more mindful. I love that. And so, I don't know if this is specifically tailored to millennials then. Yeah. But yeah, I'm an elder millennial. I didn't know. But yeah, thank you so much for listening to this podcast and me being so open about all of this and having a little cry. And I wish you a fabulous day, and I'll see you next week on Friday with a new episode. Bye.